Year and welcome back for 2023 to the Good Girl Confessional Podcast. I am, of course, your host, Sandy Lowres, and the Good Girl Confessional Podcast is proudly the award-winning podcast of the WB40 Women Beyond 40 platform for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond. We like to call it Lube for Your Mind. You can check us out over at WB40.com. And also, I would like to shout out to Alex the Seal, a podcast which I also proudly co-host. You can check us out anytime, Alex the Seal Podcast. Before I begin today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded and where I live, play and work. And in my case, it is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I want to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and pay homage to their incredibly long history of storytelling. Today in the podcast, the first episode for 2023, I'm really thrilled to be talking to an incredible woman. Like myself, she is a pro-aging advocate. Her name is Faith Agugu, and Faith is such an extraordinary woman. She is the founder of a movement called Silver Sirens, where she brings women together, diverse, incredible women, to embrace aging. She does live events, online events, all sorts of events. She's pretty extraordinary. I know that you are going to love her story. Please welcome to the podcast, Faith Agugu.
Hey there. When Sandy's not interviewing kick-ass women, she's hanging out with me at Alex the Seal, a podcast about music and nostalgia. I'm Jo Pybus, and each episode, Sandy and I talk about all the songs that got us hooked up, knocked up, and broken up. Do yourself a favour and search Alex the Seal on your podcast app. Love you, Molly.
Hello, Faith, and welcome to the confessional. How are you today?
Good, thank you, Sandy. Lovely to meet you eventually. It's been a while.
It has been a while in the making, and I feel like, I don't know if the universe was against us, but we're here now, and I'm super excited to meet you finally.
We prevailed.
We have prevailed. I first heard all about you through Sandy Davies and Susan Jarvis and wonderful friends who think that you are amazing. And I've been following along with you, and I think you are as well. So I wanted to have you on today because I think our vision is so aligned. So obviously, Women Beyond 40 on the Good Girl Confessional is a platform for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond. And it really is about changing the narrative around ageism. So you, like me, are a pro-aging advocate, which I love. And I wanted to ask, tell us all about Silver Sirens and where this concept came from.
Yeah, big topic. I mean, I'm so excited that this area is being fleshed out with so many amazing women. I started, Silver Sirens were originally launched in 2018. And I'm a psychotherapist. I'm based in Sydney. And the idea was launched because as a psychotherapist, I was referred to, and women who were in their 40s and early 50s were referred to me because they were actually in depression around aging. And as a woman of African descent, that's the opposite to what I grew up with. My culture is about revering aging. The oldest person in the room is the most special person in the room. It's the most important person in the room, the most aspirational, the person that we're all aspiring to be. So even though I'd been a model for a very long time, I knew that there was ageism, around. But I thought it was specific because I was a model and I'd been a model, and also because I worked in the fashion industry. I didn't realize that it permeated all aspects of Western society. So I was kind of quite surprised. So the idea of Silver Sirens came because working with these women, I realized that they had internalized this negative narrative. Most of the time it wasn't theirs, but then internalized this idea that women decayed. Women became less, and as women lost their youth and their fertility, their value decreased. And women were talking about feeling invisible. And, women that were having children leaving were talking about the grief around empty nests, and women were struggling around irrelevance. And then there was all the physical changes that were going on that they were freaking out about. Their hair was going great. They were getting the thickness in the middle. And, I worked so hard at the gym. Why is that not changing? So, together we went on this exploration. And one woman led to another. And in one stage, I had 8 to 10 women in my practice who were just looking at aging. And as I was working with them, I learned a lot about the process, and what they were going through. And even though it wasn't my personal experience, I was learning with them about what that was for them. And I felt really pissed off is what I felt. I felt pissed off that the narrative was so kind and positive towards men and so cruel towards women. And for me, my instinct was, fuck that. Sorry if I'm not supposed to swear. But I just said, no, this has got to change. And then I started to, look at what could I do? So I wanted to create a platform that, one, addressed these concerns that women were having, but two, offered an alternative narrative, and to think about aging as a celebration, a privilege and a celebration. And that's really what the inspiration for Silver Sirens was for me.
I love this. This is like music to my ears, Faith, because, from someone who was, raised in Western society where you're absolutely right. There is this patriarchal and societal view that women, once we hit this bizarre magical age of 40, there's like a line in the sand. We can't quite see it, but we know that it's there. And it's like as soon as we step over that line, somehow our value starts to decrease with every year, which is ridiculous. And yet my experience was meeting so many extraordinary women who were in their 50s and 60s and doing like incredible things and had started businesses and were adventuring. They were going out into the world and really, really pushing against those boundaries. And so my experience of women was the complete opposite of what society and the patriarchy is trying to tell us. And so absolutely fuck that. And I think, right, I think it's a really extraordinary thing. But on the other side of that too, I was also meeting a lot of women through my platform, which I started in 2019, who were saying they felt invisible, who were saying that they just felt like they didn't really know what their place was anymore in society or in the workforce or even in their relationships. It's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. And, and it's natural that there is a natural phase we come to. And there's lots of phases that we come to in life. We go through teenage and, then young adulthood. And this is the next phase. And our society is not geared up to prepare us for it. So women, and I know men, but my passion is with women, we reach this age and there's no one around us telling us that this is normal, this is natural, this is normal. There are physical changes that are happening around menopause that, even though it can be difficult for some women, there's so many gifts in that process as well. It's transforming us. Our bodies are no longer working on creating humans. So there's all those physical, but there's also psychological and spiritual changes going on. And because we're not prepared for it, we can just focus on the negative. No one tells us that on the other side of this transition is this amazing new life. And for me, my role model was my mother. My mother in her 50s was so inspiring. Her relationship with my father was not nurturing for her at all. And luckily for her, the relationship ended. She went and studied. She started to travel. She started a new relationship where she was completely in control and she had the power in that relationship. And I watched this woman who dedicated all her life to everybody else and sacrificed for everyone else suddenly blossoming, and I witnessed that, and I saw that and I wanted some of that, and so for me, the idea of getting to midlife was exciting, not fearful. It was very, very exciting.
All right, and how bloody amazing that you had such a powerful role model, because for a lot of women, they don't have that. And one of the reasons, I guess, I was really passionate to start Women Beyond 40 and to have it as a print magazine, for example, was because I'm a huge believer that we can't be what we can't see. Yeah. So mainstream media is not reflecting us back to ourselves. They're just not, right? And yes, we see some extraordinary celebrities in their 50s, 60s. They look incredible, but that's actually quite damaging for a lot of women as well, because they feel like it's unattainable and they feel like, well, why don't I look like that? Why can't I be like that? Instead of embracing and nurturing the extraordinary people that they are just as they are.
Yes, yeah. And that's really hard. And I'm glad that you mentioned the role models, that we see on TV. One, there's few and far between. There's literally like, say, 5, 10 women. We see our Helen Mirren, you see Jane Fonda. There's like 10 women that you see over and over again around aging. And these women, no disrespect to them, but they are women that have a lot of resources and money to maintain the way they look. The average woman does not have that. So when we have these women as our only role models, it could then be that typical pressure that women take on and internalize it. If I'm not looking like that, there's something wrong with me. I'm aging badly. And I just say one thing about Silver Sirens, it's like age in your own terms, age on your own terms. That's the big, if you choose to do plastic surgery or not, great, do whatever you like. If you choose to just let it all go and do whatever you like, but be happy, be fulfilled, be happy. And that's what's really, really important. So we need realistic role models. I really agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I think it's huge. And I think that it's a really interesting thing that we witness in society, and especially in the media, where we see that as men age, we use terms like silver fox, and we sort of, right? Oh my God, he's aged like a fine wine, exactly. All of the rubbish that we hear about, which is great, good for men, but there's a double standard going on with women. So for women, the moment that, your hair starts to grey or you're getting wrinkles or whatever, there's a whole different kind of thing that we hear. And we hear words like, crone, and we hear words like, just blatantly people will say, oh my God, she's so old. Do you know what I mean? Rather than embracing the vibrancy of women, like we're not held to the same standards as men.
Yeah. No. That bottom line is, like you said, it's the patriarchal. This is a society, the context in which we live in. We've never been held in the same standard. It's a lot more harsh, much crueler for us, and we understand that, and we have to work with that. And that's why I really love is, as women, we can't wait for men to change the narrative. We've got to change it because we're the ones that's living it. And I love that. That feels empowering. I've always had the attitude, even as a woman, as a colour, if there's no seat at the table, I will always build my own seat. I do not, I'm not going to wait for you to invite me. I will build my own seat, and I'll take all my sisters along with me. For me, that's what it's about. And I think that's what I love about women. I watch women doing such amazing things in this space, and it's all about opening the doors for more and more women to come through. And I think that's what makes women really stand out,
Absolutely. And I think that that's the other thing too, is I am really passionate about changing this narrative that women are competitive against women, because that's a patriarchal construct that it's easy because it keeps women in their place, right? It's such bullshit. My experience of being in this kind of sector around women, working with a lot of women, is that if you ask people for help, women will always step forward. Yeah. And somebody said something to me, and I love this, it's like, put the ladder down so your sisters can come up. And then someone said to me, they'd heard this expression, no, throw the damn net out, right? I think that is so, right? I just love that so much. It's so important. And I think, it's really fascinating. I had a guest on the podcast, and they mentioned another woman, and she said, oh, I'm really sorry, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And I said, absolutely you should, because here's the thing. I said, the more women that are singing, the more chance this choir's getting heard, right?
Absolutely.
But that's our reality.
Yeah, that's absolutely, and I started off in my career, like as a model, and I know that in that environment, you are supposed to be competitive, and you're supposed to be afraid of the next person who's going to take your spot, and it's very competitive, and I'm so grateful from the beginning that I had women around me who didn't do that, and I didn't grow up, going through that. I didn't have women that did that. I had lots. I heard that it happened, but I never had anyone that did that. And I also worked in fashion for 30 years, the same sort of thing. Again, and I taught at the fashion school, and I would always stress so much how important it was for us not to play along with those narratives at all, but to do the opposite. And really, when people say things like models are bitchy, I'll always tell them my experience, which was they weren't. They were actually very helpful, very supportive, and very smart and professional and intelligent, that's the experience I had of people in my world, you know. So, yeah, I think it's important for us to champion other women and not to play into the patriarchy. And it's lateral violence. If we're fighting among ourselves, we're not going to really see what's going on, you know, and I refuse to play that game.
Yeah, I love that so much, because I do have another friend over in the US, and she was a model. She's modeling again now, actually, which is bloody fantastic because she's in her 50s, which is brilliant. But I think you're right. That wasn't her experience either. Her experience of being in that industry was that, you know, they heard about it, but she said, I didn't witness it. So, you know, it's this constant, as you said, lateral violence of people telling you it's happening.
Yes.
And you're supposed to buy into that narrative and say, if someone tells me, then it must be happening.
Must be true.
But I do think generally women, like they are supportive of one another. And I do think, and I've spoken about this before, you know, the rise of these kind of reality television shows where women are pitted against each other, the Real Housewives of wherever or whatever, is kind of, I think, quite damaging as well, because it plays very much into that narrative that if you get a group of women in a room, drama's going to ensue. And that is not my experience. And you've held these extraordinary conferences, Silver Siren conferences, where however many women turn up, and everyone is empowered and everyone's having a great time.
Yeah. And that's what I love about Silver Sirens. You know, I'm so grateful that I consider myself, you know, I'm in service to Silver Sirens and I'm the vision holder. And I think that I get goosebumps when I say that, because I know that it's not that so I didn't choose Silver Sirens, the mission chose me. And I'm really clear that my role is to maintain that. So I've had women over the years saying to me, oh, you know, you're such a missed opportunity. You could be selling to people. You should have these sections where, and I just go, oh my God, I couldn't think of anything more vomity. Because that's so the masculine, that's so the patriarchy. It's like, so it's almost force. And I think why it works is that we don't do that. And it's actually very heart-centered. And it's first and foremost, it's about community, and it's about creating a safe community where women can come together and everyone is included, everyone's voice, you know. So I feel like one of the things I love saying about Silver Sirens is that there are women that live in mansions as well as sitting next to women that live in housing commissions, and that's Silver Sirens. And somewhere between all that, you will find your place, you know. And for me, that's really powerful.
I think that's so brilliant, and it just gets me so excited, because I just think that there needs to be so many spaces in this world for women in our age demographic who are talking about the things that we've been told are completely taboo, things that I go on about infinitum every day, things like perimenopause and menopause, and why wasn't anyone telling us this when we were in our 30s? You know, and I think and sexuality, you know, once you hit menopause, what does that look like? What does it mean? So I think those spaces are so important for women to feel safe, right? And to kind of go and to meet other women that say, oh, tell me about it. I'm going through the same thing. And you can discuss it with no shame. And there should never be shame, right?
No. I mean, last year's event, I was so excited by this year's event, the last event. You know, looking at sexuality and just how open, you know, not only the speakers, but how open the audience were and how hungry they were for it. You know, I had women that been to every single Silver Sirens come up to me just going, wow. You know, I never thought that I could be in a room of women talking about that subject and for it to feel so normal, you know, because they kind of thought, oh my God, I'm going to be embarrassed by this. This is something we're not supposed to talk about. But they all said, felt so normal, as it should do, because we're grown women.
Exactly.
You know, stop treating us like little girls. We're grown women. We should be able to have these conversations in a really comfortable way. It's so insane.
Yes. You know? Yeah, grown-ass women who are also sexual beings, right? And I think this is the thing, though. Everything about women is so push down, push up. Don't talk about it. Sweep it under the rug. It's really fascinating to me. In my 40s, I had a blog and I was talking about, I was suddenly single after a divorce. I was talking about sex, dating and relationships in my 40s. And I'm now in my 50s. So many women, though, when I was writing that step forward, were sending me messages, and I was writing under a pseudonym because I had teenage kids. And I was sort of just spilling my guts. If I had my time over again, I would have just written under my name. Who cares? but so many women stepped forward at that time, and they were like, I thought I was the only one. I can't talk about this stuff with my friends. I can't talk about this stuff with my girlfriend, like with my family. And I'm like, really? Like, I think one of the things that was happening offline for me was I was telling my girlfriends everything in detail. And I kind of think you're right. There's a hunger still for that. And so I look like now, over 10 years on, going, why is this still a taboo subject? Why is everybody so worried about this?
Yeah. And that's why the conversation, like what you're doing, what Sandy, the other beautiful Sandy,
yes,
doing, what Susan's doing, all of our work, all of it is so transformative, and we normalize it. Every time we open our mouths and talk about this, we're making it easy for the next person, so that's what inspires me, like really, this is such good work. I'm so proud to be part of it,
Yeah, and you're doing like such an extraordinary job, because I know, tell me about, I guess, from its inception now, like, I feel like it's almost, it's becoming global. What you're doing is becoming global, which is so brilliant.
Yeah, it is. What changed all of that really initially was COVID. I always like Samatorian, and we're kind of like, once we get going, we're kind of like dogged, and we just keep going. And I saw a lot, through COVID, a lot of people were just, cancelling events. And for me, it didn't occur to me that cancelling the event was an option. But I had to figure out, so what do we do, So then going online, it was like, okay, well, that's it. We're just going online, and it was like a no-brainer. But that changed everything because, straight away we had, women started to come from all over the world. I had family members and, my sisters and my friends in the UK who had never been able to be part of Silver Sirens. Suddenly they were all there. And that year we had speakers from the US, the UK, and of course Australia. And it was just so fantastic just to hear all these different women's voices. And then since then it was like, well, we can't go backwards. So then the idea of a hybrid, and I was so nervous about a hybrid. How do you do that? And how's that going to work? And from the first year, that was last year, was a hybrid, the 2021. And the feedback was so powerful and so strong. And people said that we didn't feel like we were having a second rate of, experience, being online. And that really inspired me to like, yeah, we've got to do that, So last year, we had beautiful Kathy Lett, who we recorded a session, but that's changed now. Now you can have that, you can have people from all over the world actually speak at the event, but also, because of the multimedia, we can record it beforehand. Because what I said to those women, I don't want you staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning talking to us, because that's just uncomfortable doing those types of presentations. So let's record it. So it's kind of really opened things up now. So I'm super excited. Actually, just a few days ago, Friday, I signed the contract for next year's event. So I actually have the date for 2023, which is going to be launched next Monday. So I want to do a soft launch to launch that, So yeah, it is global, and I like that. And we're going to really focus on the global aspect of that this year, making sure that we've got speakers from a number of, countries and continents.
Love that so much. And it's really fascinating because, as you say, COVID changed so many things for so many people, and it wasn't all bad. So like, in some way, a lot of good came out of this, because we were able to connect with so many women around the world, and this particular podcast, ended up being heard in, I don't know, so many countries. It was ridiculous, which is really great. It was really nice this year to see the Spotify wraparound where they tell you how many countries that you're being heard in and listened to. But I think, I'm not sure that would have happened as quickly as it did without COVID. And I think women, as you say, were just really hungry for information, community. They wanted to know that there were other people out there. And, I'm sure one of the biggest things that women in our age bracket probably Google, if you think about it, is perimenopause or menopause, because there's a lack of information out there in mainstream media or wherever. So women are having to go and research their own symptoms. And, really, there's a danger in that as well, right? It would be wonderful if all doctors were educated in perimenopause and menopause, but my experience is that they are not all of them are. There's some great doctors out there, but not all of them know anything about it.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, when I went through menopause, my menopause story was that I had what is known as medically induced menopause because I had a hysterectomy at the age of 20, at the age of 46, 47. And the doctor said to me, "Oh yeah, there's a small chance because we're leaving one of your ovaries in. There's a small, tiny chance you're going to menopause." Literally a month later, I'm in menopause, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
wow.
"Oh, okay." And I hadn't thought about it, I hadn't had any conversations about it. And then I was like everyone else, kind of Googling, trying to find things. I found a few things. I was very lucky. My symptoms were very minor. Hot flashes was pretty much all I had. And my body changing, and I was suddenly getting thicker, and I was wearing muumuus and going, "Oh, who's this body belong to?" All of that stuff. And I just realized I had to kind of exercise if I was going to, stay healthy. So those things, but that's one of the reasons why I started. I've got Silver Sirens now has a program, another platform called the Silver Sirens Virtual Sanctuary, which is our membership site. And that's a platform that's chock full of information. So, the Virtual Sanctuary, my vision, and it started off in through COVID, because again, what we were going to do. So we had an online platform, and we've got like a menopause room, which has lots and lots of information on there. So you've got your blogs, your podcasts, you've got your research, lots of different solutions, including HRT, but also a lot of alternative. So we've got all of that, and there's sections on emptiness, lots of different areas specifically for women in midlife above. And for me, I just wanted one place that I could go to and find everything, and I just couldn't. So that was that idea. And I love the idea that there's so many amazing women out there now in this space, in the menopause space, that we collaborate with all the time. So they send us their content, we review it, and then we add it. We're constantly doing that. So, women, hopefully Silver Sirens becomes a one-stop shop for any woman from her 30s onwards that goes, what am I to expect? What's ahead of me? And they can come on there and they can look and get all the information they need.
Yeah, and I think that's brilliant, and it's really wonderful. And we'll put up all the links anyway in the show notes as well to Silver Sirens, where people can access all of that information. Yeah. But I think too, one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough, and something that I didn't realize until I was in this space, was that there's a lot of women who go through menopause or perimenopause in their 30s. A lot of younger women are going through it, and then they feel isolated and quite scared and quite like their friends aren't going through it.
Yes.
And it must be quite isolating, I think. So that's one area as well where I feel like that information is so important, because they need to feel like, even though most women will be in their 40s, some younger women are going through it. And that, where do they find the information? How do they find people they can talk to say, I'm going through this journey and none of my friends are? I mean, that's difficult as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, really important. So I guess I would like to ask, so for women out there who are 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever age they may be, what advice would you give them when they start to say, well, I feel old, or I feel like I'm invisible? What's some advice? What's some things that we can do as women, do you think, to make sure that we're feeling great about ourselves at the age that we're at, whatever that may be?
And I think, that's such a good question. And there's so many things that women can do, and it's a lot of women are going to go through that. There's usually a point a woman gets to that she starts saying, oh my God, I'm starting to feel whatever. And there's lots of different words they use. But around that, when they think about old, and I always kind of really want women to really be aware of, when they think about the words old, what they've attached to the word. I just got interviewed last week for an article. We were talking about this word. A lot of women are resistant to using the word old. I'll use the word old for myself all the time. I don't care. I love the word old. And I think it's what we've internalized around it. We're okay with the word young. Why have we attached the negativity to around the word old? It's just descriptive. It's the same as saying tall, short, wide, black, white. It's just descriptive. So when women have that struggle to begin with, I want them to, and I do this in my own practice, let's talk about all of, as well, let's unpack the things you've internalized around old, and then, because that's going to inform how they're feeling, because all it is that you're now reached a certain stage in life. Now you're told that from now on it's bad. Let's unpack what that's about and whose ideas that is. And if it's yours, what can we do about that? So I would say first, get awareness around it. Get awareness about the messages that you've unconsciously picked up, and decide whether you're going to accept them or not. And I'll say, bloody reject them because they're not helpful, you know? So,
I agree.
What does it mean to be old? So I'll just say, look at the beliefs, decide whether it's helpful for you to take it on, and look at role models. And I would say, like for me, what I heard and what I actually saw, and you said the same thing, didn't match. So the negative narrative did not match the reality of the women around me, who were women that were kicking ass, you know, in their 50s, kicking ass. So look at that. Look at, does it match? You know, start to look for real role models that are living the way that you want to be living in your 50s and 60s and onwards. You know, the women that I most admire right now are women in their 70s and 80s. My mum's in her 80s now. But there's a whole cohort of women in their 70s that I'm going, I can't wait to be where they are. I can see the way they live. I can see the confidence, you know. Yeah. So always look for those role models. And of course, there are going to be women that are struggling with aging. And we know that the women that are positive around aging age much better and make and handle that transition with so much ease and grace. They tend to look after themselves better mentally, you know, as well as physically. But it's about attitude as well. So, you know, find those women that are aging the way that you want to age and look to them, to what do they do. And, you know, they're not usually women that are running around on the gym. They're not, you know, they're not trying to kind of like stay skinny and holding on to their young clothing. They're women that have embraced that process and realize there's so much gifts, wisdom, you know, self-confidence, opportunity, you know, that comes with this stage of life. Look to those women. You know, hang around with them.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. And I think that that's the other thing as well. You know, recognizing that at our age, you know, and at whatever age, it's okay to try new things, to get excited about life, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? You know, people kind of go, it's all over now, so I'll give up. Stay curious, you know, like you know, unlike our predecessors, you know, our great-grandmothers, we're going to probably have another 30 years left. If you're in their 50s, it's a good chance you've got at least another 30 years. What are you going to do with that? And for most of us, you don't have to worry about your children because they're fully most adult or near adults. You know, there's so many constraints on your time that have now been taken away. They're being removed. What are you going to spend that time? You know, and there's so many amazing ways. And a lot of it is around legacy and living our passion. Because I think the choices we made in our 20s and 30s was about building a career, looking after our families, all those things. But now our focus has changed. So we can really focus on our passions. Because for some women, it's like going back to the things that discarded years ago because of other responsibility. Now they can go and review that. And you may not be a ballerina if that's what you're viewing, but there may be something else, you know, that you can, and now, you know, to fulfill. So I think it's about that.
I love that. And you're right. You may not be a ballerina, but you might be doing adult dance classes, and why not? And if that's your thing and it brings you joy, I say do it. I just had a beautiful guest on in her 80s who's a wildlife photographer and still
really that one this morning. Amazing.
Really passionate about it. And I mean, I just think there's kind of no obstacles to things we want to try. Yes. You know, and if you try something and it doesn't work out, so what? What a great experience, right?
Yeah, nothing is wasted. I think one of the things about wisdom, you know, for me growing is the understanding the value of failure and that no experience is wasted. It doesn't have to be, you know, and every single time I feel like, oh my God, I failed, there is always some learning in there, even if it's just that shortcut to next time I know not to go down that road. Even if it's just that, it's not wasted, you know?
No, I 100% agree. I am very conscious of time. I know that you've got another appointment to head to. I am so thrilled and so grateful to have met you today. I think you're absolutely amazing. And I love that you're giving this extraordinary message to women who really need to hear it. I think it's so great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this chat.
Thanks for listening to the Good Girl Confessional Podcast. The Good Girl Confessional Podcast is brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine. Available now at WB40.com. The Good Girl Confessional Podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to quality podcasts. We're also now available on YouTube. We chat with really interesting women about their hard-won wisdom, but it really helps us if you can subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Thanks so much for your support. Bye for now.